and acceptance. Because the reality of the world, ladies and gentlemen, is that it is made of ethnic groups, that it is made of races. And if you believe so, it was made by God, and there must have been some damn purpose for it. How is it that you're made as an ethnic group and a race, and then you're made to believe that it's a blasphemy not to speak up for who and what you are as a person? And then you're made to think it is holy to deny the skin that God gave you. But you got to face up with the reality and see what is going on in this world today. And the reality is, as stated by Kopkine in his book called Tribes, born amidst optimism for the triumph of a rational and universal world order, the 20th century is ending with an increased interest in the power of race, ethnicity, and religion, rather than the long predicted universal age of the end of history. Your own Senator Moynihan now has a new book out called The Permanence of Ethnicity. Yes. Brzezinski, under the Carter administration, talks about the pandemonium, ethnicity. You got to face the reality. Race ain't going away in your lifetime, nor in your children's lifetime, nor in their other children's lifetime. This is the reality that you have to accept and deal with. It's not going anywhere. Beyond such visions, he goes on to say, lies the emergence of another kind of tribalism, one forged by globally dispersed ethnic groups. And he talks about these various tribes and how they advance economically. Let's look at some things that are going on while we are caught up in multiculturalism and racial harmony, another joke. It's not that I don't want harmony between races. You see? It's not that. But you got to ask, what price are you willing to pay for harmony? Are you willing to pay the harmony of the grave? Oh yes, the others would be harmonious with us as long as we remain consumers. As long as we remain non-competitive. As long as we remain dependent and beggarly. As long as we don't demand our just due, then we can talk about how we get along. And yet I'm afraid this is the kind of harmony that people are talking about. Let's look at what is actually going on in our real world while we talk about harmony and love between the sisters and the brothers all over this world. Now I'll take you through a quick trip. I know we got to go here, but I just want to take a couple of things here because it's important, like I say, if we're going to remain sane, to look at what is really going on. As I said earlier, where are the multicultural businesses? Where are the multicultural jobs? Now I picked up this paper this weekend, one of those free papers called Manhattan Spirit. And it has on it, it says it's the West Side's largest weekly newspaper. Heroin makes the grade in Ivy League as Upper West Side campus experiences new drug problem. Well, they're talking about the students at Columbia who catching on to the heroin habit. Matter hard over there. As a matter of fact, they call it Columbia's dark secret. Okay. Yeah. What I find interesting, by the way, but one of the things I caught here was a segment taken out by the Koreans, what they call it, Korean America, a New York story, page 20 to 25. So we took out about 5 pages of ads here. And let's see, they're talking about various things. But let me just read you a few quotes. Here they talk about a new publication targets Asian American youth. Multicultural youth, did they say? Asian American youth. A new monthly hailing a new age for Asian American youth has reached a newsstand near you. The new second generation, that's the name of it, which made its debut last November, has created a forum of communication for young Asian Americans aimed at giving a voice to a sector of our society whose numbers are rapidly increasing, but whose needs and interests are chronically underrepresented. Where is the multiculturalism here? Where is the assimilationism here? Huh? At a time when the needs and ambitions of, this is a quote of the editor here, at a time when the needs and ambitions of Asian Americans are being redefined, our goal is to play an active role in the shaping of the Asian identity. Are we talking about becoming invisible? Are we talking about merging? You know, and the kind of thing here. The 1990 census reported that the Asian population in the United States increased 100% in the last decade, now numbering 7.3 million. Okay, another recent study revealed that 33% of the Asian population holds college degrees, as opposed to the national average of 16%. And I've got news for you. The most recent set of Asian immigrants into this country have as high as 46% of people with college degrees. Compare that then with something like 13% for black folk. You can begin to see what is going on here. You're being lulled to sleep with multiculturalism. And it goes on here, and, but I'll skip over that for a bit. I just want to look at something else here, down at the bottom, called Association Unites Community. Korean Americans have prospered so impressively in New York City because of their cohesion as a community. Multiculturalism here, ladies and gentlemen? Denying color? Denying identity? No. But this is the age of multiculturalism, isn't it? Yeah. And the Korean Association of Greater New York has nurtured this unity in the metropolitan area for over 30 years. They're nurturing unity, and we're trying to nurture something else. Their major organization bringing cohesion, and ours is trying to disperse us throughout the American population. The longevity and success of the association is due in part to its effort to constantly adjust its mission as the needs of the Korean community mature. Now that Korean Americans have achieved social stability and economic prosperity, the Korean Association is looking to help improve relations between Korean New Yorkers and other ethnic minorities in the city. There's your multiculturalism. We're going to be nice to you after we get all the money. And after we stabilize ourselves and stabilize our community, then we're going to deal with the ethnic relations. It's a lesson. And this is what we've been trying to tell black folk all the time. Why are you trying to integrate and love other people and get caught up in it when your greatest problem is to do what? Integrate with yourself and love yourself first. And the greatest bit of multiculturalism will come from the fact that once you become a cohesive, integrated ethnic group, you can deal with other ethnic groups from a position of what? Power. Yes, strength. You have something to trade. You have something to sell. You have something to buy. You have something then that demands their respect without you having to march and do all of the kinds of things that we see ourselves doing today. And every other group knows this is the way you do it. You stabilize yourself, you build yourself, and then you reach out. To live harmoniously with other ethnic groups, we need to reach out and cooperate one with the other. But we notice this is coming after what? 30 years of economic development. But a good deal of what we call multiculturalism is merely a new face put on advertising. You say, well, we recognize that other groups exist in the world. We want to sell them things. This is chiefly the way whites approach it. We want, to them feel comfortable buying things from us. So we're going to talk about diversity a little bit. Today, the Korean Association serves as an umbrella group for over 1,000 Korean and non-Korean organizations throughout the 5 boroughs. It is widely recognized as the leader of Korean American organization, with this president duly elected by Korean American voters from the entire metropolitan area. How many people know the Koreans went through the polls to elect their own leader? No. I know, we were so busy trying to run for president with Jesse Jackson until we didn't recognize that. And I've said often that Jesse Jackson would have been a much more powerful man if he'd run for election within the black community and served as an elected official of the black community representing the black community's interests. That's right. Rather than trying to run in some general election. He could literally have led the so-called third world had he led the black community and identified with it and integrated with it and been legitimated by it. You see, because this is what groups do, who are real in the world. And it goes on here. Now they're getting ready here, let's see, to deal with what they call charities. See, here we come, right? When it comes to the charity part. They're going to give us some turkeys. And it starts with greengrocers produce result. Over the past 20 years, there has been a highly visible metamorphosis in New York's produce industry. We don't have to know that, do we? During that period, as any New Yorker could tell you, Korean Americans have come to dominate the retail end of the business. And I'm just skipping over here. At the center of this revolution is the Korean. Did I say multicultural? Did I say racial harmony? No, I said what? Korean. Ethnic identity. The Korean Produce Association. Did I say the All Races Produce Association? No, it says what? The Korean Produce Association. Oh, but this is the age of racial harmony and multiculturalism, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Located in the Hunts Point market, which I predict they will take over in the near future. The association was founded 20 years ago to help new merchants with the various problems associated with owning a retail business in New York City. Same kind of thing that I'm trying to get black people to recognize here today. People must be directly instructed about how to do things. Why is it that in tandem with the number of degrees in business administration, black people have fewer businesses to administrate? And the more degrees in business administration, master degrees, MBAs and so forth, we've gotten, the less we've come to own our communities as a people. It must mean then that those degrees are not designed for African Americans to own their own economic situation or their own communities. Those degrees, like all the other degrees, are designed to make us high-priced servants for our masters, to own nothing and to control nothing. Get them so that we can serve other people in the exploitation of our own people. No amount of going to college and getting a BA in business administration is going to tell you directly how to run a grocery store out here on this street. Because the course is not designed that way. And the thing that I'm trying to get people to understand there, we need to put out these publications that says directly how to own a grocery store. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Where's the wholesale market? How do you rent? How do you do such and such a thing? This is the kind of instruction in business we need, not some kind of lollygag theory and a lot of doggone accounting, but direct information about how to do what is real. Not something feeding a bourgeois fantasy, but something that actually feeds the people. And yet this is what other groups do. There are 2 curricula in this world. There's the formal curriculum in the schools, and there's the curriculum that takes place in the homes and in the businesses and in the streets of an ethnic group. And it's the ones that take place in the streets and in the homes and so forth that's the real one, not the ones in the schools, you see. And when we talk about African-centered education, you see, you can begin to see why African-centered education differs fundamentally from many other forms of education, because it looks at the problems we have to solve. I guess my time is running out here. So I'll wrap it up. But I just want to point out a couple other things here. It was founded 20 years ago to help the new merchants with the various problems associated with owning a retail business in New York City. Starting with only 30 members, the association has expanded to over 1,000. A key element of that strategy has been to share ideas and concepts which led to the revitalization of their industry. Not being educated for whom? Other folk. Not being educated to solve whose problems? Other folks' problems, but whose? Their problem. But the Negro think he is really being educated when he can tell other ethnic groups how to solve their problem, but he can't solve his own. In fact, that's why he goes to school, to solve other people's problems. And he's called brilliant and smart when he can solve other people's problems, but he cannot use his own intelligence to resolve his own community's problems. The association also guides members through the gauntlet of problems they frequently encounter when operating in a foreign business culture. Interesting. I've told black people for years, you must see this business culture and the American business culture as a white culture. Stop talking about standard business practice. These are white folks' business practices, designed to meet their needs based on their history and their experience. And when you practice them, if you practice their practices, you can only do what? Support them. There's no such thing as a standard business practice. There's no such thing as I've said before, as standard education. You understand? There's an education that meets your needs. There's an education that advances your interests. There's education based on your history, based on your psychology, based on your values, based on your goals, which are not the same as other people's history, psychology, and goals. And therefore, when you get an education that is not fitted to your own realities, it is going to work against you and destroy you. But this kind of lack of knowledge is hidden behind the concept standard education, standard business practices. No such animal. They didn't come to learn standard education, standard business practices. They practiced the kind of business that was relevant to their own reality as a people, relevant to their history and their psychology and their culture and their tradition. And it worked. But those of us pretending to be white, acting like white, have only succeeded in maintaining our separation and depredation as a people. I told people years ago, there's no such thing as a black bank, but you went on over there and you built up Freedom National to get yourself insulted. And every year it sat on that street. For every year it sat on that street, we got additional non-black businesses on it. And yet you were deceived into thinking that that bank sitting on that street would advance black economic interest. It could not. If you look at the reality of the American economic system, if you came to understand the nature of the American banking system, and if you came to understand the nature of our economic situation, you would recognize that a commercial federal bank is the most inappropriate institution for advancing a group's economic interests. You put your monies in there and financed the moving of jobs out of New York City. You put your money in these banks and you finance building of highways and sewers and suburbs and moving jobs and factories into the South or out of the country completely. Let me tell you, because a bank just doesn't hold your money. It must invest the money. It must lend the money. And what does it do? If there are no businesses in your own community to which a bank can lend money, then it has to invest its funds into someone else's businesses and someone else's assets. Yes, we're bringing it in here. which means then the African American community, because it misunderstood its own economic reality, supported the reality of other people and led to its downfall. I just want to quote one more thing here so we can begin to get some sense of what we're dealing with, and I'll be through it right after this one. New York Times, March 22nd, 1993. You know, I talk about education. This society can only brag about how it has freedom of information because it has succeeded in destroying black people's minds. Here's a society that does not want to hide what it does to various people, and it doesn't. Every means by which it manipulates and controls and dominates is published right in front of your eyes. That's why our children cannot learn to read and must not learn to read. Because you know, ladies and gentlemen, if black people really learned to read well and acted on the knowledge that's available to us, you would get censorship in America. They would hide knowledge from you. The only way then that this country does not hide knowledge from us, it makes sure that we take no interest in reading, that we run from books, we run from papers, we run from libraries. We see reading as unmanly. You see, we get headaches when we read. We get sleepy. We see it almost as un-African. We start even making excuses for ourselves. Our thought is non-linear. While there's we got a lot of that stuff too. People hiding things. We are intuitive people. Yeah, right. Just means you don't want to do the hard work of reading and thinking. You want to sit around and guesstimate and estimate and all these other things instead of grasping onto reality and being precise in what you're doing. Seeking new ties and clout, Korean grocers joined voices. The Korean Grocers Association of New York had a surprising guest give the invocation at its annual awards meeting last month. The Reverend Al Sharpton. Not only that, they have also sponsored spots on black radio stations honoring heroes like Thurgood Marshall. The Korean Produce Association ran a scholarship program for black minority students in conjunction with the Amsterdam News. Got a picture right here. They're sending 2 colored girls to Korea over there. President of the Korean Association of Greater New York provides last-minute tips on life in Seoul, Korea. Provide tips on life in America, man, to 3 young students, black people, sitting here. Mara Griffith, Elizabeth Ortiz, and Duana Evans, shortly before they left earlier this month for studies in the Asian capital under a scholarship program established 2 years ago by Kyung-hee University for African American students. A total of 100 scholarships were given to studies on the undergraduate and graduate levels. Under the arrangement, students are to be sent in groups of 20 over a 5-year period. Come on. Come on. Typical neo-colonial game, typical brainwashing game, and how cheaply we can be bought as a people. Giving away millions and billions of dollars for a few stupid scholarships, and for some people who are going to come back and convince us that it's in our interest to support people who exploit us. Yes. And I see them buying the Amsterdam News. Almost every week there's some scholarship being handed out to black students. On a range of issues, Korean business owners in New York are using the strength of their numbers to try to increase their political influence and improve their business opportunities, and perhaps most important, mend their bitter relations with other ethnic groups. Told people years ago, what do you do first? You get the economic together first. There's no power without economic power. Negroes thought power was in voting. Power is not in voting. Power is in money. Power is having control over major resources. And any ethnic group that's smart gets this first, and then it moves into the political arena, not the other way around. Yes, and the grocers have elicited municipal help to set up a huge new food co-op to cut their costs drastically. Who are they going to sell the food to, huh? Community relations initiatives by them and others have included taking black leaders on tours of South Korea and sending black students to study there. And now they're going to push their concern by voting as a bloc in this year's mayoral race. They have made a collective response, and you know, they go on here. The organization is trying now. You were complaining so much that it wasn't that the Koreans were taking livelihood and taking your money out of the community, not living, not sharing, but just coming in today and taking the money out. You know what our complaint was? They don't smile at you when you come in. They look like they mad. You know, and they learned that all black people need is a smile. They give you every number and nickel in their pocket. They'll rob their own children of a livelihood. They'll starve them. They won't keep their money to educate their children, even though they complain about it. Smile at them. Say hello. And they'll just lay it on you. The organizations now are trying to change the behavior of Korean business people so that they are less likely to spur a negative response. This has been done partly through extensive advertising in New York's 4 daily Korean newspapers and 3 cable television channels. And seminars are being offered to teach Koreans to smile more frequently, something they say is rare in their culture. Boy, what a smile will do for you, huh? Their total sales approach 1.5 billion. It's thus hardly surprising that the giants of the food industry, from Anheuser-Busch to General Mills, streamed to the association's 2nd annual food and trade show. Did they say multicultural show? No, last month. The Grocers Association, they give a little history here to Koreans who remain in the food business, and they go on here and they talk about, now what are they getting ready to do? Now they got clout, fighting sidewalk competition. Okay? Yes, these competitors have more than any other issue. It is peddling that is energizing Korean store owners to register and vote. Their goal is to drive the city to crack down on illegal vendors and more tightly regulate legal ones. Black men pushed into the street, kept into the street, and now we get a group of people who rise up on the black man's money, and what thanks do we get? We turn around now and he's going to use his clout to run them off the street. But of course, how can they not consider us fools anyway? People who went and fought in Korea and died in Korea, whose blood was shed in Korea, whose blood will still be shed in Korea tomorrow if the North Koreans decide to attack or the Chinese decide to attack. And while we were dying and fighting for them, they could have come over and enjoyed the privileges that we could not even enjoy at the time. And while our monies and our tax monies and so forth were going to this peninsula, going to make this peninsula a safe place for the white boys to invest in so that they could get rich. While black tax money was going to Korea to build highways and infrastructure, while black money was going to invest in the building of industries and the stabilizing of governments, something that the United States never did for African nations of African people, even though it was filled with African people on its very soil. We are dealing here then with the people who should have come here and given you thanks for the sacrifices that you made in protecting their lives and ensuring their freedom. And yet what we get a bunch of black folk who believe that they owe the Koreans a living and who support their becoming wealthy so that they can turn right around and run even the vendors off the blocks of New York City. This is because people believe in fantasies and will not deal with reality. Ladies and gentlemen, racial identity is not a joke. It's not a thing. It's not just a custom. Identity is the source of a people's survival. It is the key to people's survival because identity is the basis upon which they organize themselves. They act in unison and act as a collective. It is a means by which they share one with the other and structure their relationships in such a way that they enhance their living and they protect their very lives. And I'm telling you today then, ladies and gentlemen, in this age of multiculturalism and racial harmony, that if the black man does not reestablish his identity And unless the black man reclaims his identity as an African man, an African woman, unless we reclaim African consciousness and identity, our days on this earth are not long. Thank you kindly for your attention.
A hand for Brother Amos.